Hi, hello, MRK here, and today we're gonna do something a little bit different, a little bit more complex, because we're gonna make a project. And it's not gonna be a whole project, like we're not making a full game from start to finish, but we are starting a new game. And I'll probably scrap this project after the video, but maybe I'll leave it and record some next tutorials on this project. So maybe it will be useful after all. So what's the reason behind this video? There are a lot of videos that teach you or teach people in general how to make certain systems, how to make certain assets, maybe implement them, integrate with your existing project. But I don't think there are a lot of videos that teach you how to actually start a project. And I'm not talking about making a new project and just calling it whatever, making it from a template and just yeah, you're done, good luck. But how to actually make a project, or you could say your own template that you can use with other projects. So that's what we will do now. We will make a simple template that has all you need, all the foundations that you need to expand on. So yeah, let's begin. Before actually, making a project, we probably need to know what it is going to be used for. So in this case, we're gonna make an FPP project. So a first-person player that will be focused on collecting items and moving to another level. So it's quite simple. You can actually make a game out of this. Flappy Bird is is an example. I mean, you collect things and you go further. But we're not making a side scroller. Just a base for something bigger, something more complex. An actual foundation for FPP that might be a very serious project eventually. Okay, so we know what we want to do. So a simple character, simple controller. We want to be able to move around, collect items, interact with things, and just be able to go to the next level, open a pause menu, go back to the main menu, and stuff like that. So let's begin. We know what we want to do. So we are ready to make a project. I already made a project, but it's not from a template. We're not using FPP template. We're making a blank project because blank projects are not contaminated with assets. And if we are making something from ground up that we want to use personally for other projects, we want to make that base ourselves. We don't want to really base on other assets, stuff that's made as a as a learning tool, honestly. So yeah, this is a blank project, and it's nothing in here. It's just a content folder that has literally nothing in it, and we have an engine content that has, well, stuff that is baked into the engine. We can use it, but we don't have to. So what is the first thing you see? Of course, it's the untitled level that we can move around, and well, it's a simple landscape. Some light, some clouds, some everything, some of everything. But we are not actually gonna be using this level. We're gonna make something of our own. But before we do anything, I like to do some editor preference changes. And first of that, it's actually enabled in that project, but it usually is not in other projects, and definitely not when you first install the engine. And it's this little top bar that says, well, FPS, memory count, objects, and that is not enabled from start. So to enable that, and that is, I think, quite useful to have, is to go to editor preference, go to performance, which is here, and then you have show frame rate and memory. Very simple thing to do. It's just a checkbox, but you check it, and you don't have to actually type stat FPS to have FPS on your screen. Right. Let's disable that. You have all of that in the top bar. So very useful. Second, I think very useful thing, but maybe you don't like it, you don't have to enable that, of course, is open location. In default, it opens in a new window, and I really don't like that. I like to have everything in one window and just in tabs. So I click that and change to main window. So now when you open an asset, it will open in that window as a new tab, like editor preference, instead of a new window. Very useful for me, for you, maybe not. I don't know. It's just something I do. And in this video, I'm gonna just tell you my routine, what I do when I make a new project, which happens to be a first-person player project. And I'm gonna tell you a few tips along the way on how to do that. Tips on how to, enable cool things that will help you later. So that's almost everything from just the base setup. Another thing that I do, but you don't have to, but I suggest you do, is actually connecting to source control. I'm not gonna do this here or on any testing or learning projects, but if you are starting something serious, then you should really consider using source control. It's nothing too complicated. You just need a repository on one of those systems and connect, and then you will have a green nice check mark, and anything you do you can save to a repository, and then your changes won't disappear. Pretty cool. Okay, so we have the basics out of the way. So what's the first thing I do when I make a new project? Except, options and stuff. I make folders, because without folders, you're doomed. You need to categorize your assets and keep a clean project, so you know what's where. So let's make a new folder. We're gonna call this one levels. And one thing I really like to do is just to color my folders. So for this one, maps or levels are usually this orange, dark orange or light orange color. So I just do something like that. Click OK, and now if you're looking for levels, just look for the color and it's there. And if you don't want this panel to be here, then just actually forgot. You could hide that, but I forgot. Where is it? So for another time. I usually leave this open or just don't bother with it, but hey. Levels, yes, we have levels, and for levels we're gonna make two levels. First is main, and the second is menu. So that's the two levels I almost always use. One separated for just the menu, so when you open the game, and the second for the base game. Of course, you can have multiple levels, but those are the base two I always do. So let's open up the main level. Of course, save that. And now we have a true blank Unreal experience. So nothing, just pitch black. How do you solve that? We make a cube, as I think I always do. I make a cube. Tap F to snap camera to the object. So like that. And now we have something in our scene. Now we need a light so we can see the cube. For light, we just go directional light. So it's basically a sun. We don't really see the sun, but it's there. And now we can see the cube. Next thing we do is to add a skylight. So it's basically like directional light, but it doesn't work without the directional light, but it enables some scattering of light. So without the skylight, it would just be pitch black. With skylight, it's a little bit shaded. Next thing we want to do is to add actually atmosphere. Where is it? Atmosphere in volumes, maybe. I don't often start new projects, but when I do, I'm always confused. No, just kidding. You just gotta find it. Sky atmosphere is there. And if you can't find something, then you can always search for that. It's something that's not very obvious, but if you click that quick add panel, then you can start writing. So we want atmosphere, we just type atmosphere, and we have what we need. So another quick, nice tip. And now we have sky, and we see the sun. Very nice. Okay, next thing we do, real-time capture. That's also nice to have, because without that it doesn't work, obviously. Now we do have a nice shading. And I always like to make directional and skylight movable. So just click that, and that enables us to actually move the sun. So let's make let's select this directional light and E for rotation, and we rotate the sun, and we see it updates in real time. So very nice. Can also move this, but whatever. It's too far away, so it doesn't really have an effect if we do this or that. Okay, next thing is exponential height fog. And what it does, it makes the lower half of the map more like sky. So yeah, very nice. And one thing left that we are missing from the basics is clouds. So let's type volumetric cloud, and now we have a whole world. Well, an atmosphere. We don't have ground, but that's not to be done in the template, because sometimes you want to do a landscape. So if you're making an open world, a large project, and if you are not making a large open world, then you probably want to just make the level yourself. So from cubes or from whatever you're going for. So we are not doing any landscapes, but we are gonna make some prototyping. So okay, now we do have an atmosphere. Now it's time to make some prototypes. Prototype level, actually, that's how it's called. I'm gonna use modeling for that. You may not have that. It's quite a new tool. It may be on by default in the engine, but if it's not, then just go to plugins, type model or not. How it's called, I don't know, but it's somewhere in the plugins. Tools. I think it was in the plugins, but I forget how it's called. Anyway, if you don't have the modeling tab, then just search for it on Google. It will tell you how to enable that. And it's, I think, just a plugin you need to enable. But if I'm wrong, then it's probably somewhere in the settings. So yeah, modeling tools, very nice. And we are not gonna use almost anything from that except CubeGrid, a very nice tool for prototyping. When you click it, it will make a nice grid. And now we can select something, click E for extrude, and now we have ground, and we can walk on that ground. Now let's make a wall. Now let's make something like that, and you click E and Q to do that. E is pull, so extrude, and Q hides that bug. So that's the main controls. And of course, you can select multiple with shift, do corner mode, do something like that, extrude, and now we have a little nice ramp. Okay, accept. Now we have a basic level that doesn't have too much in it, but well, it's a start. Let's close the modeling mode. Now we want a place for player to begin, to spawn. So to do that, we place player start, click, and it placed it on a ramp. So something like that. Let's do that in the middle. And to snap the object to the ground, we just click end, and it snaps to the ground. Another nice quick tip. Okay, let's save the main level. We have something to work on. We have a place to begin. And as you know, as you could notice, everything you make with that modeling tool will save in the new folder in the levels called generated. So this is me. This is the developer, and we have the mesh we can open and do stuff with it. So if you want to change the collision, for example, then we just enable the collision, simple collision, and we can change it if we want. Or we can just disable the collision, and it will be used for something environmental is somewhere in the distance. I mean, you can do some environmental placeholders with that. Why not? Then you don't want really a collision. But okay, we are here. Let's go back to the main folder. And the next thing we're gonna do is materials. So every time you make something, it's gonna have, well, no material, which is called actually world cube something, world grid material. So just a default material. We're not overriding with anything. Is default for all assets, right? So we don't really want that, because if we make a lot of assets, we want to make them look different. So if we have an interaction cube, we want it to be white, for example, and let's make ground green, right? So we will change that in the future. I mean, if you are making a serious project, then you will change that in the future, but for debugging and just prototyping, very, very useful. So let's make a new folder. Let's call it materials. Let's make it green, because materials are green. Something like that should be fine. And in materials, we're gonna make a new material, call it M base. It's just for debugging. You can call it whatever you want, but usually you want to start with M something, because M is for material. If you want to make a material instance, then you call it MI, right? So the purpose of this material is just to debug stuff. As such, we honestly are good with just that. Make a color, pin it to base color, make it a parameter, and call it color. And then we make material instances, and we can just change the color, and it's fine. So this is all you need, honestly, but I like to do something extra. And I noticed I didn't show you how to make that. It's basically a constant. I can just do that and type constant. This is actually a constant for vector. And if you don't want to type that, there are number of keyboard shortcuts that I will not show you all of them, but I will show you some. In this example, I just hold 4 on my keyboard and click with my left mouse button, and it makes a new 4 vector constant. Yeah, this is not a parameter. We can do this with 1, with 2, with 3, with 4, whatever you need, right? And if you want to make something dynamic, so something that you will change in game or in material assets, then you make it a parameter, so convert to parameter, and you can of course convert it back to constant. In this case, just a parameter. So we have a color, but we sometimes want to use metallic, specular, and roughness. So let's make the values for that too. Let's make a parameter. Actually, for metallic, we're gonna do something else. Because metallic can honestly be just 0 or 1. It can't really be anything in between. It doesn't make really sense. Either something is metallic or is not. So let's call this specular for now. Let's call this roughness. F2 doesn't. Okay, parameter of course. Roughness. Let's pin it. I like to do roughness 1. Let's make it nicely placed. Okay, like that. And for metallic, we actually want to use a switch parameter. So static switch, actually switch parameter. Let's call it metallic. And let's make 2 constants. First is gonna be 1, and the second is gonna be false. So now instead of a variable, so I mean, instead of a scalar value, we're gonna have just a bool value. So we can turn off or on the metallic value. Let's leave it off by default. And sometimes I want to use something emissive, but not always. So I also like to make another parameter. Actually, let's make a new one, because if you copy, it sometimes binds with the previous one. So let's try to avoid that. Static switch parameter. Let's call this emissive. And let's just plug this color in, and in false we're just gonna make 0. Okay, so I think we are almost done. Let's just make 1111 here, so we have a nice white color by default. Let's save. Saved. And let's make a few base colors. So create a material instance, call it mi base red. Let's duplicate, call this one blue, and duplicate again, call this one green. Then we open up each one of those, select color, and this is red, so let's make red 1.0, and for green and blue we're gonna do 0.1, because we don't really want a pure red, just almost pure red, so it looks better. And let's do the same for green and for blue. So green, nice and green, and for blue, bingo bango bongo, we are done. Now we have some assets that are not saved, so I'm gonna click Ctrl, Shift and S, so it saves everything. And we have some basic colors to use. Let's use the base one for the, actually not the base one. I was supposed to make a green, but green doesn't really look that good. So let's make a fourth variant, which we're gonna call almost white. So it's white, but not quite. And let's make it 0.75 on each. So it's like 3/4 white. Okay, that's much better. Let's maybe rotate this a little bit. Or maybe not. It was fine. Okay, so we have materials. Now we can apply them to whatever we need. So a ground, maybe an interactable, maybe we're gonna make a weapon or something. Then we have some quick materials to apply. Okay, so the next thing is making a new folder called blueprints. And this is a folder that will hold all of our logic for the game. Let's make it blue, because blueprints are blue. Let's enter it. And that's probably the last folder. No, it's not the last folder. I thought it's gonna be last, but actually with the change of how inputs work in 5.1, we are actually gonna make inputs as separate assets. So okay, for blueprints we're gonna make a base, and in base we're gonna make a few different things. First of all, we're gonna make game mode base, which will be called GM from game mode, and base. Now let's make another, call it menu. And game mode is basically collection of main blueprints that will be used for your in your game by your project. Excuse moi, I need to take off my blouse because it's hot and I am pretty hot. Wish you could see that, right? Okay, so GM base. There is a viewport. I don't actually know why, but there is a viewport. We can actually add logic here, but we don't have to, and usually we don't. So only thing we care about is basically this, so classes. And in those classes we're gonna set other base classes that we're gonna make in a moment. So okay, we have base, we have menu. Let's save both of those. And we can actually go to project settings now. So let's open up the project settings. This is basically where you write about your project. So project title, you can type that. So in this case, it's gonna be tutorial FPP. And for company, I'm gonna say MRK. For description, just a tutorial, blank, FP, project, whatever. Type what you want. Project thumbnail is something you see in the launcher. So if you want to make an actual icons for your game, then you have to go down to Windows or other platforms you're making your game for, and you need to actually put your game icon here. So the project thumbnail is not your project icon, just saying. Okay, so let's go to map and modes. We can see that we have editor startup map and default map. We can already change that. To editor, we want to use main. And for default map, we're gonna use menu. So this. Because if we start up the editor, we actually want to work on the game, not really on the menu. In most cases, in most of times, so it's just something that works. And for default game mode, we're gonna select actually base. It's not gonna be a game mode that we start with, but it's gonna be a game mode that is used throughout our game in most levels. Right, so by default it's gonna be base, and for menu you're just gonna go to the menu level and select it there. Okay, so this is done. We can actually go to our level, to our menu level, so we don't forget. And we just go to world settings, override the game mode, select menu, and that's done for now. Okay, so back to base classes. We have game modes in which we can select classes, and now we have to make those classes now. Okay, so for starters, let's make player controller. Let's call it BP main controller. And let's make another one. And let's call it BP menu controller. Because for menu, we don't want to have the mouse hidden. We want to make the mouse visible. And for main controller, we just want to hide it most of the time. So for menu controller, we can already go here. And this is gonna be UI based menu. So let's just type set show mouse, ticket, and input mode UI on. Player controller self, so it's all fine. Okay, let's save, and menu controller is done basically. And for main controller is there is something more to be done, a little bit more, not too crazy, but we're gonna get to that in a moment. Okay, for what's next? We want to make a game instance, actually. This is not here in common, because a game instance is not common. But game instance is basically a class that is persistent all the time when the project is on. So if you have different levels and you want to save variables between those levels, then you want to make a game instance. And it's something I do in literally every project, so it's good to do at the very beginning. Let's call it BP main GI. You can call it however you want. Sometimes if I have different projects and let's say I'm working on zombies, then I like to call it BP zombie GI. And for game modes, I like to call it game mode zombie based or something. So it's not a rule to use, of course, main GI or something similar, but it's nice to always add BP before that. So you know you made that class and it's not a C++ class. Because you can make all of that in C++. We're not making C++, we're just making blueprints. So in GI we don't have any viewports. It's just a collection of variables, macros, functions, and dispatchers. So if we have score or player health or inventory or whatever, then we can store it here. And if we move to another level, then it will stay here. Okay, so main GI is done. Let's make another class and let's call it HUD. Every game needs a HUD and this is no different. So let's call it BP HUD, main HUD. And this is actually not a widget. HUD is basically a class that holds or is meant to hold widgets. So if you make an interface, a user interface, then all of those classes, all of those widgets should be managed by HUD. And I see, especially new people that are just beginning their journey with Unreal or with game development, just use player class to spawn or despawn certain widgets, and it's not really a good thing to do. It's best to have just a HUD class that manages all of that for you. So just make a HUD, don't be stupid. Let's close project settings. We don't need that and probably won't need that. So we have HUD. For menu, we also could make a HUD, but in this case, it's just gonna be a super simple menu. We don't have to manage anything there. And if we wanted to make a more advanced menu that has a very advanced options and different tabs and stuff, then we would make a new HUD just for the menu. Now we don't need that, but actually let's make a new HUD just for the menu, so we have everything. Okay, HUD. As you could see, we can also make child classes. So if we make a HUD that is a very special HUD, let's say, that has all of the logic we have, but sometimes we want to make something different or have a different HUD for each user, but the logic is the same, then we can make a child class and just add something to that. but let's make a new fresh HUD. Let's call it BP menu HUD. And yeah, let's save everything. For main controller, we can also do this in the begin play. Just show mouse off and input mode game only. All right. Okay, let's continue. I actually did a little break, but you didn't see that. One thing that I actually remembered right now, and that might be useful for you, it is useful for me when I record, is to actually hide the taskbar, so this thing, and that's Shift F11, Shift plus F11, and basically that hides the taskbar, and you're good to stream or record or whatever, and you just want to, you know, show the editor and nothing else. Okay, so we made a main controller. Let's see, no controller. Yeah, it's show, and this is false. So the main controller will hide the mouse cursor. Okay, so those are our base classes. Do we need something more? For now, I don't think so. So those are base classes. Actually, if we make a new character, we could place it in the base folder, but not necessarily. So I guess for just the base, let's keep it, you know, simple. And for the player, let's make a whole new folder. So let's call it player. And for the player, we're gonna make a new class, call it character, and call it BP FPP. So this is going to be our player. Let's save it, but let's not make it right now. Let's fill the game modes. And then we can close them and just be like, done with that. Okay, so for GM base, we have player controller. That's gonna be main. For HUD, main HUD. For default pawn, we're gonna choose FPP. And for, actually that's it. for base. For menu game mode, where are you? Here. For menu, it's gonna be VP menu controller, menu HUD, and default pawn. Actually, it doesn't need a default pawn because we are not going to be moving anyway. It's just, you know, UI based controls, so it doesn't really matter what's here. Okay, so let's compile, let's save, and thing we want to also do to hook up everything we made here is to go to project settings, and in maps and modes there is a game instance class. If we don't pick our custom game instance, then it will not pick up, so it won't work. We won't have our game instance, so always do that and remember about it. Okay, so we made base classes, we made a player class. So what's left to be done? Inputs. But before we go to inputs, let's make a little bit of our player code. So we already made it based on parent class characters. So we have character movement, we have mesh, we have a capsule. So a lot of the things is already there, but we don't have a camera. So let's add a camera. Let's add it here. It's gonna be a camera. And let's add, how is it called? Spring arm. We want spring arm because we want to actually, Actually, this is not a third person, but and could be useful in first person player, but I guess okay, let's scrap that idea. For a third person player, it would be just thing you do without thinking, because of course you want the camera behind the player and all that. For first person player, it could be useful if you wanted to make a very, let's say, smooth movement, or the player is not moving that smoothly, but you want to make something very custom for the camera. So then you could use the spring arm, but I guess for just a simple first-person project, let's not do that. So let's reset the camera position, move it here, and that's roughly where eyes are, so it's fine. And yeah, if you had a mesh, and in first-person projects you sometimes do, then you would place the camera here, and then you would use the mesh socket in here. Right now it's empty because I don't have a mesh, but if you had a mesh and you had a socket, then you could use that to place the camera basically on player's shoulder. So if you run, then the camera run with the mesh's animation. But we don't have a mesh, so let's not do that. And I think this is going to be fine. We can test it if we hit play. Then there is our character. It works, but it of course doesn't have any inputs, so we're gonna do it right now. But the mesh works, and I just got an error. I just got an error. This is the error. This thing here. Set input mode game only expects a valid player controller as player controller. So that tells us that in our controller we need to actually hook up the self value. So in here and in here we actually need to do that. Get a reference to self and do the same thing here, because it expects to be actually plugged in. Let's try that now, and no errors, so it's all good. Okay, so for inputs from Unreal Engine 5.1, there is a message that you get on inputs and that you didn't see in the 5.0 and other versions below. It's new to 5.1, so if you're starting on 5.1, then you can see that. And the message is here. In project settings, you go to inputs and you see this. Axis and action mappings are not deprecated. Please use enhanced input actions and input mapping context instead. And that tells you that this thing here, action mappings and axis mappings are now, well, gonna be deprecated. So you should not use that. And if you want your projects to be actually future-proof, then you should not use the old method with action and axis mappings, and you want to use the new enhanced input actions and contexts. So normally you would just click plus plus, but we're not doing that. Let's go to content, let's make a new folder, and let's call it inputs. For inputs, we want to actually make input mapping context. So IMC, let's call it base. And let's make a few inputs. IA, we're gonna make movement. We're gonna duplicate, call this one look. Duplicate, call this interaction. And if we wanted to have, crouch or jumping or whatever, then everything we add here. Okay, so when you open this, you can see a few things, but honestly for us, just the value type matters. For the old method, you had axis and action, which was bool and scalar. Now we have bool, float, and two vectors. So very, very nice. We can use those. And we will use those. I mean, not the 3D vector, but for movement and for look, we're just gonna use the vector 2D. Very nice. So let's open IMC base. Let's add those three inputs. First movement, then look, and then interaction. For interaction, it's just gonna be E key. For look, it's gonna be mouse, XY to the axis. So that's also done. Very nice and quick. And for movement, it's gonna be a little bit more complicated, but not too much. We want to have for inputs W, S, A, and T. We want to open those up, and we're gonna use modifiers. So we are using a 2D vector, and by default, the movement, well, did I change that? This is bool, this is a vector 2D, of course, and this is also 2D vector. Okay. And yeah, this is a vector 2D, so by default, everything that we do is on the x-axis, but we want to change some of those to y-axis. So W and S, we're gonna change the axis for Y. So we're gonna do a swizzle input axis values on those two. And for those two, we're not gonna do that. Okay, so for input is basically going from -1 to 1. And if we press a key, it's gonna be 1. If we don't, it's gonna be 0. If we want to go in reverse, so do -1, then we have to negate. So S, we're going backwards, so we're gonna do a negate. And A, we're gonna go left. So right is 1, left is -1. So let's do a negate on that. And this, of course, 1, 1. So nothing to be done there. Okay, IMC is done. Now we have to pin it. We go to blueprints, we go to base and main controller. For main controller, we're gonna do add mapping. Oh, is it like that? Mapping context. Input mapping. Add input. I'm gonna find it eventually. Okay, I forgot one thing. We need to first get the enhanced input local player subsystem, because it's not in the controller, it's in the subsystem. And now we can add the mapping context. Add mapping, let's pick IMC base. And pin it. Select all, click Q to snap everything nicely. If we wanted to do this in player character, we of course could. but then we would have to use the controller, get controller. So I just like to do this in the controller already, so I don't have to use more nodes than necessary. Okay, interaction IMC base, maybe we will come back to that because it's I am not 100% certain that I am correct, but we'll see. And for controller we are done for now. So let's open, actually I'm gonna keep base here, and in content 1 I'm gonna open the player tab. Maybe we're gonna add something more to that. We'll see. And if you want to add more content browsers, then it's just in window, content browser, 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, you can have multiple windows, viewports, and stuff like that. So it's, I am not teaching you about this, I'm just telling you there are options that you could use and that might make your life easier. Some people actually like to bring out the content browser like that, go full screen on the second monitor. So, do what suits you. Do what suits you. Okay, English hard. Let's go back to FPP and let's start encoding our inputs. So let's remove all of that. We don't need that. And if we had a need for any of those, we can just, event tick, and it's back. So for now, it's not needed. Let's do the first thing. So I look, and let's enable player looking around. So we have that 2D vector, we can break that. And looking around is, adding basically pitch, controller pitch input, and add controller yaw input. So pitch is basically up and down, and yaw is left, right. So okay, X is left, right, and Y is up and down. And again, maybe not, but probably yes. Let's do a sequence, and on triggered, so it's called all the time. Started is called only once, and completed is on button release. So basically this is pressed, this is released, and we have also triggered, which is very nice. Let's do a sequence, let's plug those in, and let's see if that works. Okay, that didn't work. So first thing first, I need to, yeah, this is right now. So Y is actually the pitch, and the X is yaw. My mistake, but well, important thing is to actually make mistakes, I think, because then you can learn. You can learn from your mistakes and do something better next time. Remember and stuff. Very, very nice for actually working on projects. Okay, so the yaw input worked and the pitch input didn't work. And the reason behind that is actually camera. We want to tick this, use pawn control rotation. Pretty sure that's this option. Yeah, it's this option, but now the pitch is inverted, my bad. So we want to do this. Multiply by -1 and plug this in. All right, and now we have a camera that we can move around. So let's comment this. I just select, click C, and it makes a comment. Looking. Now let's do moving. So IA movement. Actually need water because this is a long video. I mean, I thought it's gonna be long, but it's freaking long. Very nice water. Maybe I'll cut it into parts, but I'm not so far away from the ending. I mean, it's like a second half, right? So it's like top 2 hours, and I'm gonna make, of course, timestamps on this video, so you can just go from one thing to another, remind yourself about certain things and stuff like that. Okay. Let's break that to the vector. And let's do the similar thing I did here. So just sequence, triggered, and add input, add movement input. It's gonna be like that, and second here. And the reason there are 2 instead of 1 is because you can, of course, go forward and left at the same time, so you know, strive. Okay, so it's probably correct, but okay, let's do X and Y like that. And for world direction, we want to get a forward vector, not this one. Get actor forward vector, because we can actually calculate the vector from rotation, but we can already do that with that single node. So why bother? And get right vector. Again, not this. Get actor right vector. And this is what we need. And let's plug this in, see what happens. We have movement. And of course, I need to switch those up. I will honestly never learn which is Y, which is X, and sometimes it's even inverted. So if we actually remember that X is forward or X is right, then it might be different in other projects. So honestly, this is usually X for forward, but not in this case, I guess. Okay, we go forward and sideways. Actually, I noticed that my editor is very laggy on the video, but that's because I guess I'm doing too much FPS. Let's limit that. Actually, will that work? No, this is iOS. So where was that frame? Let's do fixed frame rate at 60. Okay, it doesn't lag. Okay, so it's good. All right. So if you want to limit FPS, just use fixed frame rate. 60. That's good. Because by default it's 120, but if you record, then the other application next to the editor might lag a little bit. So yeah, that was the case. So yeah, we have movement. We can walk and look, and Actually, one last thing to do is interaction, because we, as we said before, we want to be able to collect things and just go to the next level. So for blueprints, we're gonna make, actually we don't need to make a new folder, but if you wanted, then just new folder interactable or interaction or whatever. But I'm just gonna make a new class called actor, BP. Let's say, what could it be? Collectible. Let's make a collectible actor, and let's add a cube, or actually maybe a sphere, because it looks nicely. And for sphere, we're gonna use a red material. So it's like BM, it's not BM, it's M base, right? M red. What did I call it? Ah, of course, material instance. Sometimes I forget T. Emi red. Still not? What the hell? Emi base red. Sorry, it's a long video. Emi base red. Okay, this is our collectible with a nice material, and yeah, we're gonna leave it like that. Let's place it here and here. Let's make a new blueprint that is going to be based on trigger. So trigger box. Let's call it BP win, for example. And when we go to the win, then we win the game, basically. Let's make something that we can see. So a sphere, maybe, again. And let's make it ME base blue this time. So we go here to win. Let's make it smaller, like that. And on actor begin overlap, we can cast to BP FPP. And here we would add just the win condition. But for debug purposes, we can just do print string one BP win. Can snap to the ground, and when we walk to this thing, which is not visible for some reason, interesting. Is the actor hidden in game? Let's check. Visible, it is visible. Is it hidden? Actor hidden in game. Yeah, we don't want to hide this. Okay. Yay, we won. Okay, now we just need to collect the balls and count the. I guess we can count the score. So let's make a simple counter in GI. Where is it? Base GI. We're gonna have a score, variable score. Because if we go to another level and another level, then the score will persist. So we have a score, and actually I'm gonna do one thing more, but not right now. BP win. yeah, we're gonna make an actual win condition, why not? But in a moment. And for collectible, we actually want to make two more things. If we want to interact with objects, then we want to make an interface. That's called BPI interaction. So interaction, well, not interaction, interface is basically a way to cast to other actors without casting, or just send a message, and if a receiver is of that type or has a certain interface, then it will respond. So let's make interaction, and that's all we need. Okay. In collectible, we want to implement the interface, BPI interaction, and on interaction, we're gonna add score. And on FPP, we need to make last event called interaction. And on interaction, we're gonna actually make this event. So on started, we're gonna cast a line trace by channel. Channel is gonna be visibility. I think the collectible is yeah, it has blocks, so it will work. And let's make a start and end. Start is gonna be a camera, and get location, word location, of course. And I'm gonna also get forward vector, so the direction forward from the camera. World location is a start, and for end we're gonna take that forward vector and multiply it by literal float. Let's call it 500. It's basically the distance that we shift the forward vector. And last thing, we want to add those two together, because the forward vector is just a direction. So we need to add it to the location if we want to have an actual location here. So okay, we line trace by channel. We break the heat. And we take the actor and make a message for everyone that has an interaction event. And that's basically it. We can also debug this, so for duration, let's call it 0.5. It will make a line, so like that. Right, and we hit this, then it's gonna trigger the interaction event. So this here, this that, this is done. This is interaction. Let's compile and save. And last thing to do is to actually, I always do that, and I recommend you do this as well, is make a blueprint function library. So pp utilities, and in here you can make functions that will get your very used classes and with a right type, so you don't have to do manual casting. So we're gonna take GI, because we need GI. I'm gonna call it get GI, and actually that's pretty much it. And get GI, we're gonna get game instance. Now this is taking the where is it? Here. This is taking the class here, but we also need to cast, and so we have a right asset or a right class. So cast to GI, our main GI. Let's make it a pure cast. Let's add a return node, pin it here, pin that here, call it pure, so it doesn't have an execution node, and let's call it GI, so it appears as a compact node. So this is basically a node. This is how normal nodes work, and if you add something in compact node, then it will change its appearance to something like that. Get GI, something like that. So we just have a node, no name, no nothing, just easy access. So now we have GI, and now we can access score and get score. Get score and set score. Like that. Plus or increment, we could do increment, but maybe some collectibles are worth more. So just +1 for this example. And then on condition, we also can get GI score bigger than the score condition. So we want to be, let's say 5 points. So player can move to another level if he collects 5 points. So actually more than 4 if we want 5. But we only have 2, so let's make 1. Okay. And if branched through, then you won. So, okay, collectible. Score, we increase score, but we also want to destroy the actor. So it's no longer on the level. Save. Destroyed. And we won the game. And if we don't take those, then we can't win the game. Simple as that. Okay, so the main game works. We have the base mechanics, and last thing I guess to do, a very last thing is quite cosmetic. So let's make a new folder called widgets. Let's make a new widget. Call it WBP or widget blueprint. And call it main widget, or main, you can call it whatever. And on main widget, just do canvas, just do text, anchor to this thing, 0, 0, and text you can bind to get GI score. Right? Very, very simple. Save. And we have a HUD class that we made before. It's called main HUD. So on main HUD, we just on begin play create widget of type we made before, main widget. And we add it to viewport. All right, so in the left top corner, we can see a number. And if we collect points, then we see those points on our screen. Very nice and simple. Is there something else we wanted to do? I guess menu, but menu is also very simple, so I don't feel the need to show you. It's basically like the main HUD, but instead of the main widget, you just make buttons. So make a button, make a text. And of course, you duplicate those. First one opens a level. So let me show you that. On new game, you would make open level by object reference and pick your main level. On the options button, you would open a different widget, and on quit, you will just do quit game. So yeah, I would do that and probably save this as a template that I made for other projects I might start in the future. And yeah, this is basically how I start my work, how I start new projects and go from there. So I hope you found that useful. I know I was going a little bit fast in the second half, but I mean, it's a long video. I don't want it to be 2 hours. It's almost 1.5, well, it's 80 minutes right now. Okay, so it's it's pretty long, but it's also very, very concise. So if you find yourself with experience, with some knowledge, with eagerness to start a new project, and you don't know, well, how would a pro do that, right? So kind of like that. And now you have a base to make a very nice game from now. Okay, I probably won't make any videos that are that long anymore. The next video will be very, very short. For example, it's just gonna be probably 10 minutes, but yeah, I wanted to make one long video like that to show my routine, to help people, you know, see how the game is started, from ground up, how do you build foundations and make something simple, quite fast, but with a nice background, and that is functional. Okay, so that's it, and see you next time. Bye bye.